Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Often in the aquatics hobby, we get caught up in fish from South America, Central America, Africa, Asia, Australia, and we forget that there are fish right here in North America that are pretty cool. In this video, I wanted to show you some North American biotopes that I think you're really going to enjoy, so stay tuned. So this is the first thing you see when you walk into the Cleveland Aquarium. This is a very large native fish display. And the whole front area has got native fish, cool water fish. I like this quite a bit. This is many thousands of gallons. Here you see a catfish. Here you see a yellow perch. There's bass in here, gar. A really nice mix of fish that are allowed to grow to their full potential because of the size of the tank. We've actually had yellow perch before in a fish tank, and they are really striking fish. They have wonderful color. Their personalities were great. They weren't too aggressive. They took to pellet foods and prepared foods readily. I like them, and one of the things I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below, are you interested in keeping native fish? It's so easy for so many to look at the fish keeping hobby and look at all these fish from other continents and want them, whether it's from Australia, Asia, South America, Africa, and sometimes we overlook the fish that we have close to us. What's really interesting, a lot of these fish, there's a lot of different sizes, a lot of different colorations. Now, yes, they're not as colorful as some of the fish we're used to seeing in the aquarium hobby, but they do have some really great personality. They can get quite large. The one thing I've never really been super interested in keeping are bass. I think they get pretty large, and I don't really have the space for them. They are absolute tank busters, but some of these other fish are quite interesting, and we're going to see some fish as we go through this fish room tour that stay on the smaller side, and surprisingly they have pretty decent color. This fish tank that we're about to look at was really big. I would say you're looking at least a 12, maybe 15 foot tank. So it was a sizable tank. Had, again, a lot of cool water, North American fish. There were creek chubs in here. There were, at least the sign said that there were darters in here. I didn't see any. Shiners. Here we have a hognose. I thought this was a really cool fish. Had kind of like a golden color to it. Certainly, at least in my opinion, a more interesting fish than like the Chinese algae eaters or something like that, but really kind of a cool fish. I like these a lot. And again, when we think about fish that we commonly collect, this is very similar. There's a little bit of red, brown, a little bit of gold. These are the shiners here that had a nice yellowish gold color to them. They didn't seem to be overly aggressive, just kind of hanging out, as you can see here, in a decent sized school. I mentioned this in the previous video that we did about the Asian biotopes. By the way, if you haven't checked that out, I will put that in a link in the description below. That was a really cool set of tanks. But one of the interesting things about these fish tanks, just like most of the fish tanks that they had, was the low lighting. Now, they did some invasive species stuff here as well. Here we've got the lamprey, and look at these teeth. You get a really good idea, a clear picture of just why they are so dangerous for fish when they clamp onto the side of fish and they're eating from them. You know, these things, I really wouldn't want them attached to me, but I just thought they were cool. The way they were attached to the glass allowed us to get that. This is an invasive species, the round goby. It comes from Central Eurasia. It's a cool looking fish. I like it quite a bit. I would say size-wise, they were somewhere around 8 inches or so. You can see there's quite a few of them packed in this tank. The fish tank was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 gallons. It was much taller than it was long or wide. But I like gobies, and this was probably my number one fish at the Cleveland Aquarium, just an invasive species. All the fish they had there, I really enjoyed watching these fish. Gobies are just goofy, and these guys were no different. They look kind of like the pug or the bulldog of the fish world. Their faces are all smushed in, and they're just so ugly, they're cute. Now, in the Great Lakes, they've had both a negative and I don't know necessarily if it's a positive impact, but the negative impact is they outcompete some of the fish that are about their size. They eat fish eggs, they'll eat fish fry. One of the things that they also eat is a lot of crustaceans. What's interesting is that they also serve as a food source for larger predatory fish like small and largemouth bass. So their numbers are actually doing okay because of the introduction of this fish. The water snake is starting to make a comeback because of that as well. So it's pretty interesting that this snake is making a comeback because of the goby. The round goby, as you might expect, this is definitely a salt-tolerant fish. It can be found both in fresh and salt water in its native habitat. Temperatures, the Great Lakes can get quite cold, and yet it's surviving just fine, so this would be considered more of a cool water fish. Again, it would be relatively easy to feed. The only problem is because it's an invasive species in the United States, I doubt we would be able to get them and keep them in the aquarium hobby, at least in some of the states. But again, one of my favorite fish just because it is so goofy, so silly looking, and really cool community aspect. Now this tank that we're looking at here was a smaller tank relative to the other ones they have, still probably close to 7,500 gallons. I really like this fish, the Americanus vicularis. Cool fish. Again, a lot of nice color. There was almost like an iridescent greenish gold to it. Didn't seem to be super active. It doesn't get really large. So again, when we're dealing with fish that are native, it'd be kind of cool to have. This tank that we're going to look at now was an awesome setup. Had one of my most favorite fish in all of the tour that we took. This is a very large tank, as you can see, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 feet long or so. And again, it was housing cool water fish. We had crappie, we had sunfish. This was really cool. I think this was the star of the tank. So we've got this sturgeon here. This particular species stays on the smaller side, so it's going to get somewhere around the 2-foot mark. So this is not one that you're going to see that's going to get 7, 8, 9 feet. And the only way that you're going to house it is if you've got a creek in your backyard or a river. But this is a really cool fish. Again, these are cool water fish. I found it fascinating. It was relatively active, even though we didn't see a lot of action here on camera. It had a little bit of personality. Here you can see it again, kind of hanging out in the corner. And the other fish in this tank were really cool as well. So we can see here we've got the crappie, and again in the right lights, the shimmering of these fish is really pretty cool. You got the silver and the black. Another one of these Americanus that you see, this one had a little bit more color than the other one that we saw. Would love to hear from you in the comments section below. Have you ever kept a North American cool water fish tank before? And if you enjoyed this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.